We heard from Jared Leto before the news. I want to start with his portrayal of the Joker because it is immediately the worst ever screen version of this character that I've ever seen. But keen as you seem to be to drum up some animosity, kind of personal grudge between me and Jared, I don't think it's his fault. You know, I mean, the character to me, I mean, it comes across like Richie from Bottom got into trap music. I mean, it's just this kind of totally awful version of the character. Leto rightly paid tribute to the other actors who've played the Joker, Cesar Romero in the original TV series, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, of course, who won an Oscar for it. But there's no reason that he couldn't have done something equally as interesting and singular as any of these characters. You know, you look at treatments of the Joker, even in just the Batman graphic novels. There's one written by Grant Morrison called Arkham Asylum a long time ago, where the Joker is this kind of pansexual trickster character drawn from Carl Jung, and it's just like a treatment that we've never seen before on screen. You could go in that direction, you could go in countless others. But instead, they have made them this kind of swaggering wannabe gangster. And, you know, to understand why this version of the Joker doesn't work, you just have to look at the way in which he behaves, how he dresses, and what he stands for. You know, the green hair, whereas with Jack Nicholson, that was a result of chemical burns. Heath Ledger, someone talks about it being part of his war paint. With Leto's character, it seems like a style choice. And, you know, he's a tattoo, he's got tattoos, he's got jewellery, he wears designer clothes, he likes hanging out in the VIP area of strip clubs. So we know from his behaviour that he is someone who is enthralled to trends and worries about his personal image and is obsessed with status. Now, at a stroke, that stops him being scary. So the way in which this character has been assembled, and it gets to the heart of what is completely wrong with Suicide Squad, is it takes these iconic characters like Batman, like the Joker, and also this stable of other characters who have the potential to become iconic, not least of all Harley Quinn. And it makes them vapid and poserish and irritating in pursuit of a kind of edginess, an idea of edginess that is totally exterior to the source material from which they've been drawn. So what's doubly exasperating about it is, I think, Suicide Squad is exactly the right property by which DC could G up the cinematic universe. Largely speaking, these are unknown characters. People do not come to them with expectations aside from the Joker and aside from Batman. The Dirty Dozen concept works. I mean, it's kind of the DC equivalent of Guardians of the Galaxy, which of course did such great business for Marvel, the James Gunn film.
Not really, though. Just because they're slightly secondary characters, you can't just instantly compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, no, but they're secondary characters who have checkered pasts and who people don't really have any foreknowledge of. What Marvel did with Guardians of the Galaxy was they effectively launched a new kind of comic sci-fi franchise.
And there was a lot less expectation on the table with Guardians of the Galaxy as well.
But whose fault is that expectation? Because Warner Brothers have been mercilessly marketing Suicide Squad ever since Batman vs Superman flopped. Not financially, but in terms of establishing that core fan base that they wanted it to establish. Warner Brothers have been hyping, and you can see the way in which the film has morphed, if you watch the trailers in order, from this incredibly downbeat, gritty David Ayer style film. And David Ayer, by the way, is the ideal director to make a good go of Suicide Squad. If you look at his previous work, he is someone who understands this kind of chemistry between people who have come from bad backgrounds.
The dark underworld.
Yes, and who are like 3 steps away from death at any time. If you think about his film Fury that he made, the tank movie, with the World War II tank movie with Brad Pitt, how does that film begin? With this noble soldier riding across a misty battlefield. And you think, okay, this looks like the introduction of our hero. And then Brad Pitt's character skulks out of the shadows and I think leaps onto the horse and slits the guy's throat immediately. And you think, oh, okay, this is who we're rooting for. So Ayer can do this kind of stuff. But if you look at the way in which the trailers have developed, we had that gritty one to start with. Then suddenly, when everyone likes, you know, fun and jokes, and this was what we learned from the success of the Marvel films, you get the trailer backed by the Sweets Ballroom Blitz and all these jokes. Apparently, all the jokes in that trailer were all the jokes that they had, and that was one of the reasons they had to go back and reshoot such a large part of the movie. So the problem with it is that even though the raw material is lined up, and the filmmaking talent is lined up. And you can't say that the cast is not talented as well. You know, you've got Will Smith and you've got Margot Robbie, who are both terrific. You have Jay Courtney, who was mentioned. He plays a character called Captain Boomerang, whose superpower is owning a boomerang. But, you know, by and large, you've got interesting characters and interesting actors who can do stuff with this. But it just never comes together. And the problem is entirely to do with tone, and it's to do with structure as well. The first act of the film, introduction. Will Smith's character gets probably about 3 introductions, I think. And it betokens a movie that has no idea what foot it wants to get off on and in what direction it's going. Once we've met all of the Suicide Squad, who are brought together, as I said, by Viola Davis's Secret Service agent, to go and carry out this mission against Enchantress, who is this kind of mystical supervillain played by Cara Delevingne, The rest of the mission takes up the entire film, and they're kind of fighting their way through this deserted city, through rain, 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 gritty, 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 rain, 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 gritty, 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 rain, 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 gritty, gritty, gritty. And then Will Smith comes along. His character, Deadshot, has this daughter who, this is basically the entirety of Will Smith's character, is that he is a father, and he has a daughter who he is finds hard to reconcile his parental duties with going out and murdering people for a living. So he's like, I'm a dad, I'm very sad, I'm dad, I'm very sad, gritty, 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 rain, 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 gritty, gritty, rain, 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 I'm dad, very sad, very sad, very sad. Then you get a big action sequence where one or more of the squad gets to do whatever their gimmick is. If it's Will Smith shooting a lot of very people quickly, if it's Jay Courtney throwing boomerang at someone. And then you cut to Harley Quinn, who will say something, well, that was crazy. And then you just reset the pieces and do that again and again and again and again until they get to the station where Cara Delevingne's character is hanging out. Now, if we're talking about representation of non-white characters and female characters in blockbusters is a very, very hot topic at the moment. Mm-hmm. The way in which Suicide Squad deals with this is just beneath contemptible, because the instant that any female character is put into the line of danger, they immediately dress up in Margot Robbie's case, hot pants and a kind of a tube top. Or in Cara Delevingne's character, she gets a kind of a supernatural bikini, and her master plan, she kind of conjures up a big giant donut made of bricks in the middle of the city, which spins around, and then a CGI brother appears. This is part of their big plan, I don't know what. And she's standing in the middle of it, and the way in which she operates this is she kind of does this weird gyrating dance that to me
is conjuring up evil
forces
she's conjuring against the world.
She's kind of swiveling on the spot, like when Stan Laurel in the old Laurel and Hardy shorts would get onto one of these sort of waist slimming machines that's like got a rubber belt and sort of jiggle around. That's what she looks like. And it is just so incredibly humiliating. I mean, you cringe on behalf of all the cast members while this is going on. And then in the middle of course, everyone has superpowers. Cara Delevingne, when she has to do her Enchantress superpowers, she's very upset because she's been taken over by a ghost. Will Smith's very upset because he has to kill people and he's got a daughter. Everyone's upset all the time. Upset. And yet they all keep stopping to say, isn't this fun? It's time to have fun. Let's have some fun.
Nobody
is having any fun. They do. They're constantly saying it, like Margot Robbie going, we're bad guys. This is what we do, and all this kind of thing. Well, what is what you do? You're just kind of standing around here moaning and grumping in exactly the same way as we were promised would not happen in this film because nobody liked it in Batman versus Superman.
It's not Batman versus Superman. This is my thing with it, right? I think that because of kind of what happened with Batman versus Superman, everybody's kind of, I think, especially kind of critics' assumption is that it's going to be as bad as that sort of thing. There's so much almost expectation for it to fail. Do you not think that a lot of people just want to go into that cinema for 2 hours because, it's a 2-hour film, it's an escapism, it's not meant to be thought about, it's not meant to be dissected, it's meant to kind of be there to recognise those pop tunes that are used in it and for it to make you feel whatever way it is. It's meant to kind of, not be thought about so much.
But look, the pop tunes is the perfect example of how cynically this has been constructed, because Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, had like the best selling soundtrack album of all time that didn't contain any original music on it. It had that fantastic, mixtape volume 1, I forget the name of it, but it was this kind of jukebox style soundtrack that worked so perfectly for that film. Someone somewhere has written a memo to David Ayer, I've no doubt, and said, we need to do what Guardians of the Galaxy did. And so in the first half of the film, and it's forgotten in the second half, but in the first half you get pop hit, pop hit, pop hit, all kind of ironically juxtaposed against horrible violence or something. There's a sequence in which Will Smith's character, Deadshot, is first given his arsenal of weapons back. And you have basically him lovingly firing machine gun after machine gun.
See, I like that.
At lots of targets to the sound of Kanye West's Black Skinhead. You think it's just so incredibly cynical because they've seen it working somewhere else and they have adopted the format without understanding the spirit of it.
But it's not the first time it's been done. Guardians of the Galaxy is not the first film to use a great pop music soundtrack. I mean, Tarantino's been doing it for years sort of thing. But I think, the way that the music was, and especially when they commissioned certain people to do specific tracks for the film. They were shown bits from the film and they were, asked to make music specifically for it, recreate popular contemporary music tracks for it as well. I thought that first 20 minutes, specifically when they introduced the characters to almost kind of like, here's a theme tune for this character, almost like each character had its own music video. I quite liked that whole idea and that mechanic of it.
But the songs in themselves don't have any relation to what's going on other than here's a cool pop or rock track that you might recognise, White Stripes, Black Sabbath at one point, I think. We'll come on to talk about another film in a moment that used Black Sabbath incredibly well. But it's just like, oh, you recognise this is fun. There's no kind of connection between the music and what's happening that is in any way kind of sparky or exciting or ironic in the same way as Tarantino does. It's not as simple as sitting down and going through your album collection and going, I like this music. Let's put this alongside a sequence of Will Smith shooting guns at things.
Do you think David Ayer's made the film he wanted to make, or the film that's in cinemas is the film that David Ayer wanted to...
No, I don't think so. And I think you can see these kind of David Ayer-esque bits when you're watching. There's a character played by Ike Barinholtz, who's this smirking tough guy prison guard at Belle Reve, which is the insane asylum where most of these bad guys are being held at the start of the film. He is a David Ayer character. He makes more of an impact than about half of the squad members in some. You have, when Jay Courtney turns up with a boomerang, this is not a character. This is just a kind of a sort of mannequin with a prop. But Ike Barinholtz is there, and he's kind of doing interesting things. He's kind of saying this smirky, cynical, tongue-in-cheek dialogue. And it feels like he's the kind of bad person that David Ayer could have told an interesting story about.